Banjo and Kazooie. It's one of those things where it should be long since dead, but for some reason, us fans just keep digging it back up. It's one of those games where it's just too good to ignore. Even though there's been a couple of games in the series, I think a lot of fans kind of just focus on the first game in the series. Some people also have a huge appreciation for the second, and then there's a smaller few that appreciates pretty much all the games in the series. Me personally, I love Grunty's Revenge on the Game Boy Advance. I recently discovered that in 2020, and then obviously the original Banjo Kazooie is fantastic. Again, it's one of those games where it's just too good to ignore, because you got games like Mario 64 that keeps throwing itself into relevancy because of the fact that it innovated the genre essentially, but Banjo Kazooie refined it, in my opinion. I feel like Banjo Kazooie is one of those games that's easier to go back to than Mario 64. Not that Mario 64 was hard to go back to, but it's just kind of interesting, I guess, where a second party game just sort of overshadows a Nintendo first party game, in my opinion. You just don't see that very often. And so it's sort of with that in mind that it's like, man, it would be great if we could revisit this and recapture that lightning in a bottle. But it seems that Rare and Microsoft may now be interested, but for a long time weren't. Let me kind of go over what each person that I closely follow has said about a Banjo-Kazooie either remake or a sequel. Stephen Males, who did the character designs for Banjo-Kazooie, Grunty, and all that stuff, he's, basically what shaped them into what they look like today. He's all on board with a remaster of Banjo-Kazooie, and I think he himself would even be interested in being a part of that project, which would be amazing. However, the rest of the people involved with the original project don't seem to be as optimistic. Grant Kirkhope, who was the composer for Banjo-Kazooie, he embraces the love for the game, and I'm pretty sure he also would be on board with it. I think he's just a bit pessimistic about the likelihood of it. He probably knows things that we either don't, or he's being aloof or trying to throw us off the scent of a potential remake. I don't know. He's a bit mysterious because he was also involved in the announcement for Banjo-Kazooie in Smash Brothers, and he was really good at pretending that he knew nothing about it, to the point where he would also throw us off the scent even then. So now it just kind of makes it even harder to kind of look at what he says. But if we're just going to take his word for it, he keeps saying basically like, never going to happen. There's no chance that this happening. As much as I'd love for this to happen, this rumor that is being thrown in front of my face right now is probably bogus. Take what you will from that. And then there's Greg Males, who still works at Rare, doing fantastic work. And his opinion on the whole thing, I believe, this is ad-libbing a little bit here. This is not a direct quote. I'm definitely just going off at the top of my brain. What he thinks is like, let old dogs lie and move forward, essentially. Like, he wants to do new projects with new people and just try to create new experiences like Sea of Thieves and the upcoming title that he's working on. And so, like, the idea of bringing back Banjo-Kazooie just seems like it's not an interesting venture for him, which is really, really a shame, because nothing else, like, if Greg isn't interested, he really should pass the torch so that Banjo-Kazooie could be a thriving IP. That's my personal thoughts. And I do think that they should kind of start with a Banjo-Kazooie 2E remake. My ideal remake for Banjo-Kazooie would be like just amazing graphics, better camera control, just better controls in general. You don't really have to mess around with the core story or anything like that. Just make it look really pretty. Just, what's the word? Remaster the soundtrack, for like, don't rearrange it for like symphony or anything like that. I think that would just go overboard. I think that the arrangement that Grant Kirkhope came up with originally is already fantastic enough. Maybe some tweaks here and there for certain scenes, maybe where it's reused in certain parts you can do a remix of some kind, but on the whole, I think that you should kind of leave that generally untouched. Just use real instruments instead of synthetic ones. And then you got an amazing remake to an amazing game. And on top of that, I think that like it should just immediately like move over into Banjo-Tooie once you beat Banjo-Kazooie. Like, make it one mega game instead of like trying to make it one then two separated or something like that. Even if it's in the same collection, even if you tried to sell it separately, piecemeal it, I don't think that you should go in that direction. The fact that these two games kind of harmonize so well when you go from one to the other, I think that you should just instead make it one mega game and just do the stop and swap and everything. And like, not only that, but instead of closing off like Grunty's lair in Banjo-Tooie, you could instead just leave Grunty's Lair forever accessible and also allow the players to go off into the adventures of Banjo Tooie. Wouldn't that be amazing? I think that would be fantastic. So that's my like dream idea for a Banjo Kazooie remake. I think that the graphics should be as close to how they look on the box art as humanly possible, maybe with some tweaks that make modern games look a little bit better, but ultimately don't mess with the art style. Just accentuate it, make it a little bit prettier, but don't try to reinvent the graphical style. So that would be like my ideal thing. And then Banjo 3E, of course, is something I would love to see down the road. There's definitely lots of people that could handle this. Toys for Bob, sadly, is not owned by Microsoft anymore. They went independent. I'm very happy for them. I hope that their ventures work out for them. And I just say that it's unfortunate because it's like they would have been a great team for either a sequel, because they did a great job with Crash Bandicoot 4. I believe that was them. And, they would have handled that remake exceptionally well, too. Then there's the people that did Lucky's Tale. They could do an okay job if given the right tools and also the right direction. They did their own thing with Lucky's Tale. So I'm not trying to say that they should replicate their style and their level of player accessibility that they had with Lucky's Tale. But what I am saying is that they have experience with collectathons. If they just kind of reference how it worked well for Banjo Kazooie and then try to replicate that, I think that you could possibly find some great results with that. Outside of them too, like I'm sure that there's plenty of teams that would do a great job. The one way to ensure that success is to, of course, start them off on a remake, then learn the game inside and out, and then move on to a Banjo 3E. That's what I think would be like maybe the best course of action for any company that decides to tackle this IP, because again, I think we've seen with so many different collectathon games that it's very easy for these things to go wrong, whether it be the game is too bloated or too hard or too obtuse, or just too taxing on the player in terms of collecting things. So all I can say in the end here is that I just want people to try. Like, I hate the fact that it's been dormant for so long. It actually makes me a little more sad than happy to see Banjo Kazooie merch, because it's like, oh, you're reminding me that this thing exists. I'll still buy it. I will still put it on my wall and stuff, but for the love of God, give us a new game too. I'm glad that everyone around Microsoft can see, like, no, this is something that people care about. I guess I should add at the end of this segment here that there has been a new segment from Phil Spencer, who has said, Banjo-Kazooie fans, we hear you, which is very, very hopeful to my soul. So I'm hoping that Phil is kind of like doing a wink and a nod. There has been rumors that supposedly a team has been at least in the planning stages for a Banjo-Kazooie game of some kind. So I'm hoping to God that that's true. And the little breadcrumbs that we got is from Phil Spencer, who has said that he acknowledges us at least. So I remain hopeful. I make this video because I want to will this into existence. And outside of that, I got nothing else to say. There's my little burp for you, and I'll talk to you guys again soon, okay? Take care.